Welcome. My name is Tricia Denton, and I'm the president of the League of Women Voters, Leelanau County. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government, works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, and influences public policy through education and advocacy. We never ever support or oppose candidates or parties. Membership is open to men and women 16 years of age or older who subscribe to the purposes and policy of the League. 1/3 of our members are men. More information can be found at lwvleelanau.org. If you'd like to join, you can also see our membership person, Beth Childs. She's sitting in the front row there. She's the one who greeted you when you came in today. She has applications as well as going to our website to find them. Annual dues are $5 for students, $60 a year for non-student individuals, or $90 for a household membership. Dues assistance is available. Membership applications, I already said that part. I'm ahead of myself today, ahead and behind. Our next forum will be held at noon on March 6, 2019. We hope to reflect on women's history, highlighting ongoing efforts toward passage of the ERA. Please mark your calendar and plan to join us then. Following today's presentation, we'll take a 5-minute break and then reconvene for a short but informative League member business meeting. Guests are welcome to attend. Today's forum is titled Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. What is it and what can I do? For today's program, myself, the president of the League of Women Voters, Leelanau County, will present a historical background and definitions for diversity, equity, and inclusion, along with highlights from the League of Women Voters U.S. DEI initiative, as presented at our 2018 convention. Followed by me will be a social justice advocate, Jody Benton, who's behind me, and she will lead us in some exercises to examine privilege and bias as they relate to diversity, equity, and inclusion. So, without further ado, I will see if I can get this PowerPoint to work. So far, my title page is working. So, just to give you all some context, in the news lately, and as recent as last night at our President's State of the Union address, issues of the history of women and the suffragette movement have been in the news. So, to that end, I wanted to give you all a little bit of background with the League in that context. The Women's Suffrage Amendment, like the 15th Amendment before it, which sought to protect the political rights of former slaves, guaranteed nothing. Did you hear that? Yeah. It did not give women the right to vote. It simply told states that being female could no longer be a reason to bar citizens from voting. To African American women living in states with systems in place to block African American men from voting, the amendment provided neither clarity nor power. So we might ask, what merits celebration with the upcoming 100th anniversary of the 19th Amendment? How can we celebrate this transformation that broke men's monopoly on political power? Hey, that's nice. Perfect. So these are some things to remember. A popular national reform movement cannot be measured simply by actions of a few leaders. Multitudes work to overcome strong resistance to sharing political power with women. Under many leaders across 7 decades, they battled in arenas of state and national politics that were infested with racial conflict. For a celebration, we need history that recognizes in the 19th Amendment a fundamental change in government, eliminating the presumption that men had a right to govern women. 3 generations of women before the passage of this amendment sought that change, and more generations fought on afterward to win voting rights for female citizens in Puerto Rico and for African Americans, Native Americans, and Asian Americans on the mainland. Those women strove to change law and political culture all over this land. because they believed that manhood suffrage, full voting rights for men and only men, made a mockery of self-government. The ideal of an inclusive electorate found little favor among politicians anywhere at the time, even though they were proposed. Many states wrote new laws to stop immigrants, African Americans, and the uneducated of any group from qualifying to vote. Some states continue today to erect barriers for citizens as they exercise their right to vote. Sometimes obscured in the hazy light of history are women and men intent on social change. They can be our key to understanding what it meant to put up resistance and mobilize political power without the ballot. They knew what damage the lack of voting rights could cause, and many of them knew when to reach out across those many divisions that plagued this country. So, when deciding what to celebrate in 2020, I have this quote here. Questions of exclusion prejudice have marred this country's women's movement since Seneca Falls. This is a quote from an article that came across my desk last night at about 2 in the morning after the President's State of the Union address last night in regard to the freshman class of representatives who all showed up wearing their suffragette white. And this is a quote from that article in this morning's The New Yorker. Questions of exclusion and prejudice have marred this country's women's movement since Seneca Falls. Given the racism displayed by so many suffragettes, how can modern women truly embrace the color white? And this is a tweet from Ayanna Pressley, Congresswoman from Massachusetts who wore a white coat. She tweeted this in response to that question. Tonight I honor women like Alice Paul, who led the movement, and women like Ida B., who were excluded from it. So that's part of what we're trying to generate some awareness about today. There's an elephant in the room. Some people don't even recognize it. It's so camouflaged, but it's there, and we're going to talk about it today. We already started to. So here's a few more points. Peer into an anti-slavery society meeting a few weeks after ratification of the 15th Amendment in 1870 to hear Frederick Douglass, black, argue it was time to return to the cause of women's suffrage. Or take a seat in the California 1896 among Union Army veterans gathered to hear Naomi Anderson, black, and Susan B. Anthony, white, urge them to vote for women's suffrage in the forthcoming election. Or climb to the balcony of Rochester's Central Church in 1903 to hear James H. Hayes, black, of Richmond, Virginia, and Susan B. Anthony make the case that freedom without voting rights was a mockery, whoever you were. These are reformers at work. These were all excerpts from a piece called How to Celebrate a Complicated Win for Women in the New York Times this summer. So with that in mind, I want to make a point about diversity, equity, and inclusion. It's often thought that, I think people sometimes get these things in reverse, but they're all connected with each other. It is only through inclusion that we can hope to achieve equity, and the result will be more diverse organizations. So keep that in mind as I go through some of the other slides here and as you think about the things that I'm proposing. So here's some things to say about diversity. Diversity includes similarities and differences among people, not limited to. This is just a short list. See if you recognize yourself, parts of yourself in any of these things. Gender, gender identity, ethnicity, race, native or indigenous origin, age, generation, sexual orientation, culture, religion, belief systems, marital status, parental status, socioeconomic status, appearance, language, accent, ability status, mental health, education, geography, nationality, work style, work experience, job role or function, thinking style, personality type, and political perspective or affiliation. Diversity refers to a population group, to population groups that have been historically underrepresented in socially, politically, and economically powerful institutions and organizations. So the people in power. These groups include, but are not restricted to populations that I mentioned in the previous slide. Populations of color. This may also include LGBTQ populations, people with other abilities or disabilities, women, and maybe possibly the most underlooked and universal disenfranchised people, or people experiencing poverty. It cuts across all those other things. So, diverse and diversity. A team can be diverse, so can an organization, but a person is not diverse. Diversity is about a collective and can only exist in relationship to other people. A person may bring diversity to your team, they can have a diversity of experience, but they in themselves are not diverse. An example of that, again, I'm going to point out last night's appearance of the Women in White. 103 women are serving in the U.S. House of Representatives, which makes the 116th Congress the most female in history, as well as the most diverse. Yeah, woohoo! Can I get a cheer from the crowd on that one? So that's some of I'm going to put forward some of our basic understanding of diversity and diverse as we're going to speak about it today and think about it today. So as far as equity goes, equity is an approach based in fairness to ensure everyone is given equal opportunity. Equity takes into account that people have different access to resources because of systems of oppression and privilege. Yeah, they exist. Equity seeks to balance that disparity. Equity prioritizes efforts to ensure that most underserved and marginalized among us has as much of an opportunity to succeed as the most well-served and advantaged. Improving equality involves increasing justice and fairness within the procedures and processes of institutions or systems, as well as in their distribution of resources, including professional growth opportunities. Tackling equality issues requires an understanding of the root causes of outcome disparities within our society. So it means taking a tough look. One of the ways that I like to illustrate what equity means is imagine a wall of a different sort with people standing behind this wall. And not everybody's the same height. So some people are tall and they can see over the wall. Some people aren't. And they can't see over the wall. They can't even jump up and see over the wall and get a glimpse of it. And then there's some folks in the middle that if they stand on their tiptoes, they can kind of peek over it, but they still can't get over the wall. If they jump up, maybe they can see over the wall, but then they fall back down. That's kind of how I like to think of equity. So improving equity involves things like bringing in stairs and ladders and ropes or whatever it takes to help get everybody starting from the same place. Oop, I skipped one. Did I only skip one? Yeah. So on to inclusion. Inclusion is an ongoing process, a dynamic state of operating in which diversity is leveraged to create a healthy, high-performing organization and community. Inclusion refers to the degree to which diverse individuals are able to participate fully in the decision-making processes within an organization or group. An inclusive environment ensures equitable access to resources and opportunities for all. It also enables individuals and groups to feel safe, respected, engaged, motivated, and valued for who they are and for what their contributions toward organizational and societal goals. Inclusion is more than making something open for all to participate in. Our meetings are open to the public. I'm looking around the room, and I wouldn't say that, the crowd that's here today isn't not representative of Leelanau County. Over 40% of the people who live in our county or claim it as residency are over the age of 60. That's most of our audience today. I still think that I'm 24 years old. I'm double that now, and I'm getting more gray hairs every day, and I'm one of the youngest members of this organization. So I know there are a lot more young families living in Leelanau County. But the point I want to make is that looking around the room today, you might not see that represented. That doesn't mean that our organization doesn't serve or represent those folks in our community. It also doesn't mean that there isn't more that we can or need to do to be more inclusive, to create systems that achieve equity. I hope that my friends who are at work right now or taking care of their kids will be able to watch the program later on Up North TV or on our website. That's why we have these filmed. In addition to that, we make our program, we have Joan Eno sitting in the front row up here, diligently taking minutes, so that folks who miss the programs can, if they prefer to read, and if they're able to read, and can get the information from our forums in that way. So those are some examples of how what you see around the room today doesn't necessarily represent our reach. Not that we can't do more. So it's more than making something open. Inclusion means recognizing the privilege that makes it possible for you to participate. So why am I able to be here today at noon? Why did some of the folks who are here have a lunch hour? They have a job that affords them a lunch hour, or childcare, or some of the other things. A vehicle that could drive in the weather conditions to get here, gas to put in my car, insurance on my car, those kinds of things allowed me to be here today. Inclusion's about getting out of your own comfort zone. Maybe coming into the government center is a place that is comfortable for you to come. That's not the case for everybody. What if your only experience with this building has been going up to the court, or being in a dispute about a building permit, or something that evokes stress, not an opportunity to learn and feel more empowered. Inclusion is about meeting people where they are at. So the expectation that we're here, people come to us, right? We need to get over that. We need to go to where people are at. And I mean both physically, cognitively, every way, shape, and form. For all to be and feel a part of and to be respected and valued is an ultimate goal of inclusion. So, as I said in my introduction, I had the privilege of attending the League of Women Voters U.S. convention back in end of June, 1st of July in Chicago. And one of the major initiatives that the League of Women Voters U.S. has launched to address the elephant in the room is a diversity, equity, and inclusion initiative. And these are some of the things that come directly out of that movement that those of us who were at the convention were exposed to. I'll just read them out loud. We commit to increase diversity in the recruitment, retention, and retainment of the national, state, and local level, and in the leadership and executive roles. We commit to prioritizing equity in the work of the League of Women Voters staff, board, and members. We commit to making deliberative efforts to ensure the League of Women Voters is a place where differences are welcomed, different perspectives are respectfully heard, and every individual feels a sense of belonging and inclusion. So, how do we do that? These are some of the steps that as a nation, a national organization, and a state organization, and a local organization that we're participating in. Embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion as a core to the League's mission to empower voters and defend democracy. So going back to that quote, that freedom without access to the ballot or self-governance is a mockery. Establish DEI at a national, state, and local level. There's wonderful resources on the US website with TED Talks and questionnaires and reading materials to delve into the process of self-discovery. Integrate DEI into planning, member orientation, and leadership development. And particularly what I've highlighted for today that Jody's going to help us with is some of this work around our own perceptions and norms and recognizing the impact of our own patterns, behaviors, biases, and privilege. We can't hope to achieve anything here without starting here first. Participate in DEI training and activities via webinars sponsored by the League of Women Voters US. Some of our members have participated in those that have been available since the convention. Engage in honest conversations about how to improve interactions. Gather stories that reflect the League of Women Voters' mission in action and share them. So, recognize and accept that you have biases. We all have bias. Develop the capacity to use a flashlight. Doesn't have to be a spotlight, that might be a little overwhelming, but we do need to start taking a look inside. Notice your triggers and your judgments. Practice constructive uncertainty. Check your assumptions. That means taking a stance of curiosity, not knowing, being open. Practice listening without interruption. Explore beyond your comfort zone. Lean in, go in, be brave. I call it being a warrior. Have a difficult conversation. Engage more fully with people who are different from you. Understand how your behavior affects others. And I just want to share a little story, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jody. There's a few people here in the audience today that were at the National Convention this past summer, and one of the things that was happening in Chicago at the same time that we were was the March to End Separation of Families at the border. And there was a little group of us that took a break from the convention and got an Uber and got a ride down to the plaza and assembled with over 10,000 people who had gathered to march. Picture, if you will, being with all those people. That's a little unsettling for somebody from Leelanau County, for one thing. 10,000 people, all in, like a 4-block area. That's about as many people as we have in our whole county, right? There was diversity in that crowd. There was a large police presence and fire department presence. Think about what that felt like to people who've experienced the police not as helpers, but as people who that you need to be afraid of. I've done a lot of work personally to reprogram myself to see people in positions of power, the police, the fire department, as helpers. So it was a good day for me to walk down the streets and see the streets lined with people who were the bicycle cops and the fire department people, and they were waving and they were smiling and they were clapping for us. And the fire department had their hoses on, spraying a curtain of mist over us so that none of us would be overcome with heat exhaustion. It was over 100 degrees when we marched. Remember that hot snap we had? Well, we were in downtown Chicago. It was really hot down there. And so to experience fire hoses being used to support and to help peaceful demonstration was really powerful. I was inspired by the signs that I saw from people of all walks of life. There was a group of physicians who were standing outside of a clinic. They were holding up signs, young people, ethnically diverse young people holding up signs, we support families at the border, and the separation of children from their families. And we got back into the neighborhood of getting back close to the hotel, and it was time to go back to the convention for us. And we turned off, and we cut across to go find something to eat, and we were walking down the street, and in our excitement we were talking with each other, and we passed a man on the street, and he turned to us, and I'll try to characterize his body language. He looked like he didn't understand. He seemed irritated, frustrated, and he said something to us. And I'll try to paraphrase what he said. I think he said something like, why would anybody come here knowing that this could happen to their children, that their children could be taken from them? I can't understand a parent who would, knowing that that's what was going to happen to them if they came here, why they would do that. And I stopped and I listened without interrupting. And I said to this man, I said, yeah. I said, I wonder what it must be like to do that, for that to be your best chance, to be your best hope for your children. I wonder what conditions those folks are coming from to be here, knowing that they would risk losing their children, being separated from their children. And his whole physical character changed. He had never wondered that. He hadn't wondered what that was like, what that might be like to be a parent. And we were friendly and we smiled and we went on and found something to eat. So those are the kinds of, from those kinds of just being ready to have those chance encounters, you have to have done your own work to be able to not take offense and get up in arms of like, well, who do you think you are, judging parents or, whatever your judgments or your biases are that you carry around with you. If you aren't aware of them, you can't be ready in a situation like that to be curious and to wonder with someone and to listen to them and have them feel heard. So I challenge you to be brave and to try to do that with your neighbors, your friends. We're going to challenge you to do that with the person next to you in a moment here, I think. And I guess at this point, I'll turn it over to Jody. I'll try to get her PowerPoint up. Thanks for letting me share some of my experience.
That's a powerful story you shared.
And I welcome any of the other folks that were on the street with me there that day, if they want to say anything about that experience while I'm getting the next PowerPoint up. Does anybody?
It was 30,000 people.
Oh, I'm sorry.
10,000.
30,000.
Yeah.
Okay, so double, almost triple our population.
That's all.
No. Get rid of mine. So while we're getting that up, I will tell you a little bit about Jody. She's very brave too. She's a warrior. Jody grew up in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She graduated from Calvin College with a BA and secondary teaching certificate as a single parent. She moved to San Jose, California for a high school teaching